Thank you, Maria. Hello, everyone. Thank you for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here in among so many Marias, which is not a common thing anymore. So yes, actually, Diliana already alluded to some of the things I was planning to focus on, but I will linger a little bit longer on some topics which I think are of extreme importance for everyone who is dealing or who is involved with people with disabilities, especially in the context of the justice system. So this is more of a conceptual approach, and I hope that you will find this interesting. So what I will focus on is actually the Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities. And I don't know if all of you or any of you had a chance to take a look at this document, and you might wonder, why are we talking about the persons with disabilities? Do they have different rights? Or why do they need a special convention all for themselves? So the purpose of this convention is to promote, protect, and ensure the full enjoyment and equal enjoyment of rights. So we're not talking about different rights for people with disabilities, but we're talking about creating the conditions to allow them to enjoy the rights in an equal manner. Because I think we can all agree, and it has been proven by researchers, by scientists, by anyone, by everyone who has a reason to prove that the societies we live in are not equal societies, do not in fact offer the same opportunities to everyone, and that is a fact. So when it comes to very fundamental rights, like the right to access to justice, or the right to not to be subjected to inhuman treatment, and many, many other issues that we are all familiar with and that have been consolidated in a number of international conventions, European conventions, national constitutions, you name it, the extent to which people with disabilities enjoy these rights is not the same. So this is why a specific convention looks at the rights that we all know from the perspective of disability. So this is what this convention brings into the discussion. And it is a novel approach. It is an interesting and very enriching approach to all those who work on fundamental rights and study fundamental rights. But it is also a very important approach in order to move towards a society that is designed and set up to embrace all people no matter whether they have a disability or not. So we're not in fact talking about different rights. We are talking about the rights that we all have, but seen from the perspective of disability, so that we can know which are the areas and the aspects we need to focus on in order to remove barriers that are in place. And let me start by saying what is a disability, because I think we need to be aware of a few things when it comes to disability. And Maria rightly said that the convention does not provide a closed definition, Diliana, sorry, a closed definition of disability, but it does provide the context of a definition. So the first issue is that disability is an evolving concept. And what that means is that due to the progress of technology and science and supportive and enhancing equipment, what used to be a disability a few years back is not so much of a disability now, or is considered to be a less important disabling impairment, and this is for sure will change in the future as well, which means that we need to be ready, and the systems need to be ready to adjust to these evolving concepts. So this is one thing. And the second thing, which is the most important, is that disability is not about the impairment. We tend to focus on the impairment in order to define a person with a disability. And we're talking here about people with psychosocial and intellectual disabilities. It's not just the impairment that creates the disability. It's the interaction between the impairment with other environmental factors, including our biases, our attitudinal barriers that we are putting in place, plus the inaccessibility of the environment, meaning buildings, meaning the language, meaning many different things, because accessibility, it's quite a broad and horizontal concept. And the third issue is that the result of this interaction is that people with disabilities cannot participate on an equal basis with others. So disability is an evolving concept on the one hand, but it's also a complex and sophisticated social concept that does not have to do only with the impairment that an individual has. And actually, what the convention, the starting point of this convention, and I think that this has been, is now accepted as a standard in non-discrimination and equal opportunities legislation, is that the impairment itself is part of human diversity. So the fact that someone has a disability, the impairment on its own is part of the human diversity. But what creates a disability, as I said before, is the interaction between this impairment and other barriers. So we're talking about broader environments, environments that are disabling and environments that we need to transform into enabling ones. And I think this is the key issue behind this whole conference, behind this whole project, behind this whole discussion that has been going on for the last few years, well, not so few, a decade since the convention has, over a decade that since the convention has been put into force. So trying to link this discussion to our justice systems. So what is the problem with our justice systems? The problem with our justice systems is exactly what I said before, that they are disabling rather than enabling. What that means is that they have been designed without thinking that there might be people with impairments that are part of them. And this is an important fact that renders them disabling. However, if we want to break this down, there are different types of barriers that one can identify. And important part of these barriers have to do with society, stereotypes, attitudes, behaviors. And this is the stigma that is associated, especially with mental health disabilities. And we all know that there is a stigma, and we all know that most of us are biased, not necessarily, we don't want to be biased, but we are biased nonetheless. And this is also transferred to the way in which we act in our professional capacity. And I'm saying it again, it doesn't mean that anyone is doing it on purpose, but it is something we need to become aware of, and we need to eliminate to the extent possible from our professional functions. So judges, law enforcement officers, lawyers, as very important actors in the justice systems, are subject to biases and stereotypical thinking, and might also be part of the problem, as I said before. So it might be, like Liliana already said, that the people with disabilities do not want to talk about their condition or reveal their condition because of the stigma. But it is also that on the other hand, on the other side, the judges or the lawyers might be afraid or might not actually know how to deal with it. So it is this interaction that is actually creating the problem. We need to find a way to eliminate these barriers. And I think talking about needs assessments and talking about ways to communicate better is an important starting point. Another kind of barrier, quite important one, are the legal barriers that are in the way. And discriminatory legislation, and of course the huge issue of legal capacity, is an extremely important topic, and one that you cannot change overnight, and one that we will be talking about for at least 20, 30 years ahead. And I must say that it is quite sad that in the years since the convention has been brought into force, actually not so much has been achieved in when it comes to removing legal barriers, especially as far as when legal capacity is involved. So legal barriers, if we add them to societal and attitudinal barriers, we already have an important problem there. But other types of barriers include difficulty to access legal information and understanding of rights. And here we need to admit that justice systems are intimidating anyway. Judges are intimidating, lawyers are intimidating, police officers are intimidating for everyone. So, and it might be even more so for people who need a little bit more time or a little bit more space to process information, or a little bit more help in coming to grasp concepts which are quite complex and sophisticated. There are also financial barriers. I'm not the one saying that people with disabilities statistically have lower incomes. So, I mean, paying for the assistance and the legal help and the legal aid that they need might be even more of a burden for them compared to other people. And last but not least, accessibility. And I'm saying again that accessibility is a horizontal issue. It doesn't just have to do with the physical environment. So it's not just the case of whether a person with mobility impairment can access a court, but also whether they can understand documents, whether they can understand the language that is used, the jargon, and whether they can communicate in a way that is appropriate to them and that makes them feel comfortable. So this is what we can identify as the main barriers that make our justice systems disabling. And I would like to refer to, and I think this is a discussion and this is a thinking process that we all need to initiate in our respective countries. And I would like to bring, just for the sake of an example, the example of the Equality and Human Rights Commission in the UK that launched, it's very recent, I mean, it was published just a few months ago, I think, an inquiry and came up with a report trying to understand the experiences of disabled defendants and accused people when interacting with the criminal justice system. So trying bottom up to see what are these barriers and how we can address them. So it's not a theoretical exercise about someone saying or thinking what people with disabilities might be needing. It's a question of asking them. It's a question of making them part of the reform process that needs to take place. And this is also something very important. So what they found through this inquiry is, first of all, the obvious fact that the justice system is not designed around the needs and abilities of disabled people, and reforms that take place without considering them might actually do more harm in reducing their participation. So impairments that might require adjustments are not always identified. This is a barrier. It has been already mentioned, and it has two sides. So both the persons with disabilities that might choose not to disclose their disability, but also the professionals who do not have the necessary training to identify or to spot this. Adjustments are not always made for disabled people because information about their impairments is not passed on. And there's also another issue I want to talk about when it comes to adjustment, but I will keep it for a little bit later on. The existing framework to provide adjustments to secure effective participation for disabled defendants and accused people is inadequate, and legal professionals do not have the guidance or training to be able to recognize impairments, their impact, or how adjustments can be made. So what we are talking about is a new system of inclusive justice. And inclusive justice means that the system is designed for everyone, no matter what their different needs and abilities are. And there is an important difference there in relation to accommodation and reasonable accommodation. Reasonable accommodation, according to the convention and according to legislation, is an ad hoc solution or removal of a specific barrier. Universal design, on the other hand, and designing a system that is made, is by default made to be in the position to respond to the needs of different people, more or less the same discussion that we are talking when that we have when talking about a children-friendly justice. So a justice system that can respond to the different needs of children without changing the essence of the justice system. This is again the discussion we need to have and the reform process that needs to be initiated when it comes to people with disabilities. So we're talking about inclusive justice systems, systems that are designed for all, which means removing the barriers that are already in place, ensuring accessibility in all the different dimensions. So both the physical dimension, but also the dimensions that have to do with comprehension, with documents, with language, with communication, and also addressing the societal and the attitudinal barriers, which can do a lot of harm. And I think what we are doing today and the training sessions we had in the different countries, and I was part of them and I very much enjoyed them. And I think having this discussion is a very important starting point. So I'm hope that we will have the opportunity to continue, because when it comes to legal capacity and the judicial systems, we are in the beginning rather at the end of the reforms that need to take place. So I will just bringing in the Article 13 on access to justice, just to indicate that what this article does is that it provides a general roadmap or a blueprint of the direction in which these reforms need to take. And the main direction is what I said before, that we don't need ad hoc solutions. We need to see how to redesign our systems in order to allow room for everyone, independently of their personal characteristics, independent of their different types of disability. As I said, we tend to talk about disability using medical terms, about conditions, about functions, about this kind of stuff. This is not just this is just one element of disability, and this is just one element of disabling environments. So we need to look at the broader picture, and we need to address the broader problem, because otherwise we will be just keep on going in rounds and actually going nowhere. So thank you very much for your attention, and I'm very happy to take questions or any comments you have during the Q&A session. Thank you very much. Maria, over to you.